function of the brain. And it's something that it's still a work in progress. So let's not make the assumption that there's an absolute solution to how the brain functions and understanding that part of it, and knowing how to respond to brain injuries. Those of us who survived it are just plain lucky. We're very fortunate. Why do you think they're predicting in the future things like cybernetics, robotics, and they're still touching just a tiny little corner of the brain itself? And if they're doing it at that point, think how far medicine has to get to. Because the after effects of any of those traumatic injuries have an awful lot to do with the way the brain functions on a daily basis. So it's much more complex than having a broken finger or broken arm. I just want to draw that out. I understand it now. I've been in it for a long time, and I've had access to some knowledgeable people who spend their lives doing the research on it. But this is never going to be a far-going conclusion in terms of us having the absolute solution during our lifetime.
Yeah. And if I totally agree, Dr. Harrison, and from the medical perspective, that when we talk to the doctors, it's a moving target.
Yeah.
The science is a moving target, and as soon as we think that something looks like it's promising, it tends to, a couple years later, I mean, we started looking, a committee looking at baseline testing,
right,
as you recall, and how it evolved over that 2.5 years. The science was
right,
starting to lead us in a different direction. It was just, and it's just the evolution of our understanding
exactly
of the brain and what we should do and what, makes it, it's doing something, but it's not necessarily the best thing.
right.
It's hard.
Prevention is one thing, safety is another, but from an athletic perspective, I think you still have to go back to good teaching, good fundamentals, good techniques on protecting yourselves out there in terms of the skills of the game, using the skills of the game itself.
Because that's another thing that the state, on another committee I sit on, the state in the past year was asked to look at how to limit non-contact practices. So like Harvard and the Ivy League started looking at how many times you would let athletes participate in full contact. And so there was some discussion about that, and Mike can give you the specifics, but it's a balance, because the concern of the coaches and the experts in the sports is if you limit practice too much, you increase all sorts of injuries, concussions being one, because you're not teaching technique. So especially with children,
right,
a pro athlete might be able to limit more because they've got that muscle memory. So that's one of those prevention things that we're walking this fine tightrope.
Exactly.
Prevention versus sending kids up for more disasters later on because we're not teaching them techniques.
Right.
And I'll piggyback a little bit on what Debbie just said and Dr. Harrison in terms of my main goal is to keep our athletes safe through education primarily, in terms of teaching the coaches the proper techniques, having our trainers available on the sidelines, the EMTs, the doctors. Something was said earlier in terms of coaches making the call. Coaches don't make the call. We've taken that out their hands because our goal is to make sure the kid's safe. It's not emotional. It's more or less making sure that kid is safe. And then also with the state's concussion protocol, then having the doctor come in to make sure that they're returning. We are fortunate to have a pilot program for the impact testing at 3 of our schools. Amy has one of those. And I know she has some information that she probably shared with some of the results of that. So we realize that the impact test is an important tool, very much to what Dr. Dawson said, but it's not the end-all be-all when trying to stop concussions. One thing that we really learned was that education is the main thing. So what we did in Baltimore County, we put up a website and have information from the CCBC, the NCAA, all these different, and the NFHS, all these different organizations that are there to help educate the parents. Because a lot of times parents don't know what the signs are. a lot of these incidents can be reduced by having parents be more aware. So a lot of these times, these concussions aren't even happening on the athletic playing field. They're happening at home, and then they're getting that second impact at an athletic event. So we have to be all in tune so that parents are on the same page, so that we as the schoolhouse and the parents are communicating together to work together what's in the best interest of the kid. So again, teaching fundamentals to the coaches. We have preseason meetings every season, mandatory. All our coaches attend. Dr. Dawson comes out, we have trainers come out. All of our coaches and every single coach in Baltimore County has to take the concussion management test. And now that's been moved to where it's bi-yearly, very much like first aid and CPR. So they have to take that test twice a year. Twice every other year, to make sure that they're certified in that, so that because they're dealing with it on a regular basis. And we want to make sure that they're knowledgeable, so they're not putting guesswork into our child's safety. And that's why we're taking it out of their hands, and we have our EMTs, our doctors on the sideline, and more importantly, our trainers who are there to automatically address those issues so that we're not putting our children at risk. And Amy, I don't know if you want to add anything regarding that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and we do. We have a pilot program with Impact, which was done by University of Pittsburgh, and they did it with the Steelers and the Pirates and stuff, and then the NFL uses it, and a lot of the national athletics, professional athletics use it. And basically it's a baseline test. It takes about 25 minutes or so for the student to do it. It's just telling us cognitively how they learn, how they think. It's kind of like a video game setup. But the problem is that once they get a concussion, if I give them the test while they still have symptoms, it causes the symptoms to get worse because they have to concentrate on it. So typically we use the Maryland concussion protocol, and we send them. Dr. Dawson sees a lot of my kids, and he does some kind of neurological testing, but not where they're making their symptoms worse. And then we kind of go through. He gives a note to the school nurse. The school nurse sends out a email to all the teachers. We have accommodations for education, for accommodation checklist for physicians to check off. Yes, the kid needs to go half day of school. It's a little bit more comprehensive than that.
It's same guy, Dr. Joya in Children's designed it for us.
And basically, they can have everything on it. They can have one thing on it. It's what the doctor or the physician seems necessary. Some of our students go half day, so they come in the morning one day, and then they come in the afternoon the second day, so they're not missing a ton of their work. The teachers understand that they're under a physician's care. They do not come to practice. I talk to the physicians all the time. Dr. Dawson and I we talk to each other almost sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes twice a day. If they want them on the bike, then we monitor them on the bike, and they do 30 minutes, and that's it. And then we have to monitor what their symptoms are. But I'm at the school, so it's a little bit easier for me. I have 3 kids now who are not currently athletes at our school. They play outside of school stuff, and they have accommodations. And, for me, I don't have time to deal with kids that aren't my athletes. I have 300 athletes right now. For me to be able to sit and do a 30-minute or 15-minute baseline test, I can't do that. I can't do it. I'm one person. I can't do 300 kids. We do the computer test. It's a little bit easier because I can get a whole bunch of kids on the computer. But the problem is with the baseline test, at least with the impact, is that it only is cognitive. There's no balance with it and that kind of stuff. And for me, I know my students really well. So even if Dr. Dawson says, oh yeah, they seem to be fine, and I don't think they're fine, I'm on the phone with him, or I'm on the phone with Debbie, or I'm talking to Mike, or I'm on the phone with the parent, or we all sit and talk, because I know that kid is not acting like they are. They can, they can pass the test all they want. But if the kid can't do what I want him to do, or they're not acting like they normally do, no, I'm not letting them play.
I agree.
And they stand behind me, and I haven't had any problem with any parent. If I can show them, look, your son isn't doing this right, or I've known him for 4 years and he can't remember my name. He knows his work. He goes through his everyday routine, and I totally understand. We've had athletes where we've had to make the call, like Dr. Dawson said, you're not playing anymore. And we're the bad guy. because the parent doesn't wanna have to make that choice. But I have no problem making that choice. I wanna see them graduate. I wanna see you, you know, have a life. I want you to see you have kids. And I want them to be active in the community. I don't, you know, we have to make those decisions sometimes.
And the thought, Scott, I have, because I sit in that seat, these guys are very focused on the high school athletics program, and I do think that we have grown tremendously in the past 5 years with what we do for our student athletes. But I saw one of Dr. Dawson's patients this afternoon in middle school.
Yeah.
And it's not just our high school athletes that get concussions. You know, it's our high school students that are not in athletics that get concussions, who may or may not. Now, we do kind of the same accommodations, but we don't have trainers for those kids,
Right.
like Amy points out. And our kids in middle and elementary school, we don't do as much concussion training for those people. You know, our website right now, anybody can access Mike's website, but it's very much focused on athletes. And perhaps the next level is kind of looking at
Kind of the general
the
population.
general population to understand that you don't shake off a head injury, and when do you go to the hospital with a concussion versus when, you know, there's a lot of education that needs to go out. I mean, Rec and Parks, I don't mean to pass the buck on to Rec and Parks, but that's a challenging group. I've talked to people, and, you know, with all the volunteer coaches and all the volunteer, that's an athletic venue, but, you know, dance, or, I don't know, there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily Girl Scouts that are climbing things and falling off, and there's a lot of risks that kids get exposed to.
Well, I think one of the problems, at least with Rec and Parks, is that you have a huge group of age groups.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the youngest, I mean, you can have 5, 6, 7-year-olds.
Four.
And how do you do a
Starting now.
baseline test on a 4-year-old?
You
know,
can't.
you can't.
None
And
of
even
these are
some,
known for
even
that.
some of these, they're pushing it to do it to some middle school kids.
Right, it was
But
one of
some
them.
of them can't understand some of the questions. So if they can't understand the question, then they get a lower score. So if you get a lower score, do you allow them to play?
But,
You know?
and I guess the response to that, a couple different things. One, most immediate, if you have a test that they can't understand that, you have to do the test.
I agree,
You know, I mean,
but I
we-
can't adapt.
No, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm saying, but, you know, you need to find a test, because I do believe in baseline testing. You know, and to say that whether it's an expense, well, you know, you look in the bigger picture, you know, what's more important? You know, so, we have to have the political wherewithal, and I mean politics in a bigger sense.
Right.
Not like this particular politician, but political wherewithal to figure out if this is a priority. And we understand, we have more information. Once we have that information, we can no longer turn the dial back and say, okay, well, you know, that I didn't know. Yes, we do know. We do know that this is very serious. And I will share with you that most recently in August, we had 3 clinics at Sports Authority to give information about concussion awareness. Now, it's not a mandated thing. It was open to all of our rec councils, of which we have 47. We're going to run it again because, I don't know, Brian, did you go to one of those?
I did, I went to the one key.
Okay. And how was that one, in terms of information, how did you find that?
I thought it was interesting. Candidly, I got more information off of, not to get too far off the subject, but my son plays Howard County football. And their program was much more intensive because they literally made you watch this video and test you on the components of what a concussion's like and other things. I mean, I literally watched 2 videos about an hour and a half long for each, compared to a group of people trying to get us, you know, in our particular case, we're just trying to get the information out.
Right.
And the more volunteers that we can get that information to, the better off we're going to be as programs. So they're teaching the techniques right, and they can recognize the issues. So I think it was a good thing for me to see. I got a baseline, if you will, but I got much more detail when I focused in on an hour and a half long video that I watched that stopped at 4 different parts to test, and then at the end have a follow-through test as well. So I thought it was helpful though, and I think that the coaches and the volunteers thought it was helpful.
It's a good first step.
Yes.
We didn't get a huge number, but we have something like in Brecon Park, 55,000 volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know,
I
all the way
know.
around. And I can't tell you how many children were involved. We have 800,000 folks in Baltimore County, which in terms of some kind of program you were talking in the schools and outside. And outside of the schools, it's a big number of folks there. So part of it is on the awareness, and you know, we have a lot of smart people around. That we can figure out a way how to get some baseline testing that makes sense, that would be able to be interpreted by qualified, licensed practitioners.
Right,
Those
that's
are
the
things
hardest
that
thing,
we
is
gotta
that
do.
who's gonna do the baseline testing?
Yeah.
Can you
Well,
leave it up
first,
to your coaches, can you leave, you know, that's the issue is,
yeah, well, but again, that's something that.
I agree, I think that
You know,
the more
folks
you
that
can get
we'll
tested, the
put out a
better.
problem out there and then we have to try to figure out, okay, how do we know what the answer should
Right.
be?
Just how you
Okay,
get
now,
to
how
it.
do we start from the end and work its way back?
Right.
That's what we can do. In terms of Rec and Parks, and I have brought, you know, some of the material, and that we have, we need to do more, you know, to your point about the video, you know, in terms, you found that one, we had to really sit there and focus on that, a lot more helpful. That's actually pretty useful information, you know, for us. You know, how do we do that in a mass kind of an effort? You know, we can figure that out, we're smart people. You know. But the bottom line is we need to get information out to a larger, wider group of folks. And you're right, you know, things can happen inside the home, things can happen in Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and anywhere else.
Right,
And
it's
people
not-
need to have an awareness of what actually is going on. And more we have, in Scott, his was not athletic, it was a
Right.
car accident. You know, people need to have a greater awareness of it. So, you know, I think I have shared with you and mentioned earlier, I met Scott at a rec council meeting, year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that.
It's hard for me to,
I'll say
I'm glad I
2
know
years.
what today is, let's put it that
Right.
way. I didn't forget the meeting, so.
Well, then that's a good thing. But I will tell you, I was impressed with the passion that Scott shared with me. I had met him, he immediately focused on, he was a very intense, focused kind of delivery, which I paid attention to. And then, you know, I've been a recipient of, you know, the
Everything.
links, yeah, just about everything. And I paid attention to that. When I came out to the picnic, it was, and I shared this with you, but it was on a Saturday. It was a day, both Dr. Harrison and I go to the same barber shop. And we'd go early in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock like that. And I happened to mention that I was headed out to Dundalk and you know, talk about traumatic brain injury. And that's when Joe shared his story. You know, with that, which, and up until that time, I had no clue. He had never shared that before. But it was one of those things, how, you know, the universe is aligned and things. So he gave me some really wonderful things, of which, as Scott knows, I shared, you know, at the picnic, you know, and because it was so relevant. It allowed people to know that, you know, here's a person who's been superintendent of the schools. He too has been a sufferer.
It can happen to anyone.
It can happen to anywhere, and the things that he has done to overcome that. So it was one of those fortuitous, I was sorry to hear that happened to you, but it was good for me to know, to be able to share. So, you know, and I thank you for inviting me, you know, for this, to be able to continue the dialogue and conversation about this.
Just understand, in 1964, 65, you get an injury like that, you didn't talk about it. This person was either dead, or if they got into the hospital for surgery, they might recover, but that was it. So no telling how many people who have been impacted adversely. Nothing happened.
I still miss little pieces, and I try and hang on before, geez whiz, you know, when I said welcome to CCBC, my memory would have been gone. So, you know, it's been a lot to wind up getting to where I am, and like I said, I am blessed to do this. But Dr. Harrison, when you were sharing the story about when you were at the hospital and the other gentleman that was actually injured playing basketball, I'm not sure if I missed it or not, but Dr. Harrison, when we talked on the phone, he wound up saying that this gentleman had the same injury that he did. And
This was a Marine,
he was the
died of
same
the same
age,
injury,
same age.
but he was hit playing basketball. And if you ever had a basketball or a soccer ball or volleyball, and they've ever been hit with one, it's that jolt that presses that cerebral spinal fluid on the brain. That's what causes it.
But I don't know that you shared that you were fortunate enough to make it. What happened to that gentleman? I didn't hear you say it. I may have missed it.
He died.
He did not make it. That's the same injury, somebody in the same hospital. I just watched the front lines running some great stuff, and believe that the majority, especially on this side, I think you've seen concussion crisis in high school sports. You know, just one gentleman didn't get water, they cooled him down, the trainers took him into the shower, cooled him down. The other one said, oh, well, he's not doing well, put cool towels on it. Well, the guy that got the cool towels, his brain fried, he died. The other one didn't. So it comes down to, and I was fortunate enough when I met Dean Scott, that she shared a story with me, and we didn't, you may have seen the guy in the shot, and his name is going to elude me at this moment, but he's a coach, Coach Rudy, that's right. Coach Rudy, who is here, and Carolyn said, I understand the importance of prevention and awareness. This gentleman had a heart attack at one of their events here at CCBC, I'm not sure, and they had the defibrillators, and that saved his life. So, you know, here at this meeting, I look at every room that I'm in, that, you know, we have the possibility, everybody in this room, to, you know, wind up moving this conversation forward, you know, by recommendations, saying, hey, this is what we're seeing. I'm really glad, and I'm more in touch with people at the Rex level, just people in the community. I have tried to talk to people at the high school level, at Dundalk, on the field, and basically what I've gotten from both of the coaching staffs when I try to talk to them is, we know what's going on. We got it together. You know, go over here. You know. So, and to tell you the truth, I never want to get hit in the head by anything ever again. I actually walked out on the soccer field and was trying to talk to a coach. I'm not doing it anymore, because I get hit in the head one more time, forget it. You know, I never want to go through. I talk to people all the time online, and they tell me about multiple brain injuries. Man, once is enough. You never want to do it. You don't even want to go through it the first time. So, so we understand the importance, and you also have something, and it seems like you have programs together. And this is my first meeting. I don't have you know, things honed. I work at everything every day to put out the best message and the most professional message I can every day. So I'm working at this. I actually have had people encourage me to do meetings different places. So this is definitely good to get under my belt. And I lose my train of thought. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to know that you have trainers at your sports things. That's really important. I was unaware, and that's part of what I was talking about. Trying to talk to the coaches, I was unaware. But I seem to, when I'm talking to the coaches, they seem to not be all on the same page. And I'm hoping that we get there. And I'm glad you like the baseline testing. Now, you yourself had mentioned, and we'll get to you in 1 second, Mike. You had said that you catch when, you know, the students are there. Now, the importance, and I know that, you know, and I understand the part about one person doing all that, but, you know, at 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour per student, somehow or another, as Barry has said, we have to find it. I think, and I hope that we do, we wind up finding a way to make that happen. If there is, you say that you catch it, and sometimes you wind up giving back to the doctor. This is what I've heard from Brian Pugh from the Brain Injury Association of Maryland, that the computer test is not the test. Is not the test.
Right.
Okay.
No, it's just an assessment. It's just a tool.
Okay.
Most of the time, the doctor has released the child back to sports.
Right.
And then I do my own. We
Right.
do scat test or
And it sounds like you're doing one hell of a job. But if someone isn't as good at their job as you are in detecting this, maybe they consider it more of a paycheck than, you know, than something else. That, well, I'm doing my job. I'm doing what they told me to do, you know, and not really being involved. If they miss it, then where do we wind up? And the part of it is that the baseline test, from what I've been told by Brian from the Brain Injury Association of Maryland, and also other trainers, is that they have wound up having athletes go to the doctors, they come back and they take the baseline test. And this is why it's, you know, really important, is because they have to call the doctor and say, I'm sorry, doctor, but you made the wrong call. This child, this athlete is not ready to return to play. And that's why the importance of this meeting, and that's why I asked everybody to come. I'm not up on everything, I'm learning things as I go along, and I'm glad to hear that Baltimore County schools is doing what they're doing. I'm really happy that the legislature has moved the conversation forward where they're taking people off. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that we can do more to wind up doing it. And then the last part of it, and I'm going to get the mic up, but the last part of it is the potential, and that's from Kennedy Krieger discussing their program. And, you know, it seems like you have your program together. I wasn't sure where it was
No,
really at.
we use Kennedy Krieger too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We have all of us.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
they could not be here on such
Kennedy.
short notice, but they were very kind. They sent us out in the mail, they said anything coming up, they hope to do that. And Mike is going to share something with us, and after that, I'm going to wind up just talking about a little something that's doesn't really cost any money. It's a little bit of time, and we kind of touched on this, and the doctor had wound up mentioning a little bit too, and I don't know who else did, somebody else did too, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, Mike.
Sorry, it's just getting your five, so I'm going to have to leave pretty soon.
Okay.
I just wanted to say two things. I guess it could be a rhetorical question, or maybe not if someone has an answer. Is this something that could be covered in health education that you brought up? No. I mean, not to train licensed people, but so
to talk about
students know
concussions.
awareness of what ringing your bell really means, that you should seek help. I mean, is there anything that would prohibit that?
I believe it's in the health ed
Okay.
scope and sequence, but I'll check that.
Okay.
I'm almost positive it's
Well, that's-
there.
Because
Where-
it seems like that would be the first line of defense, would be
Right.
someone knowing themselves something's not right. I'm sure you're not.
Yeah, but one of the problems is that when do you teach that? Like at our
Sure.
school, health is taught in their senior year.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
it's
no.
but it's taught,
You know.
taught beginning in kindergarten. There's
Right.
health units throughout.
Right.
Because I didn't even know that until this year. Like ringing your bell is, I think that's good
Yeah.
information to get out there.
I'm going to go.
Another,
Oh, okay.
no, and just the other point I think would be, I think this is a great meeting, and I'm glad some of these stories really, we can bring it home.
Yes, and
And,
then Mike's really dove in with, jumped in with both feet on concussions. He's been in touch with Kevin
Well, the
Pierce.
the numbers are staggering, and it's something that's preventable, so I think that obviously catches our attention. At the state level,
It should catch everybody.
this is very contentious to pass laws, dealing with helmets or things like that. This is something you need to work with the rec councils, with these groups, and I think that's the best approach, the way we've been doing it, because any kind of laws are gonna, ruffle feathers, and I think the awareness and collaboration with these groups is probably gonna be the best way.
Well, I was going to ask everybody if they can make a recommendation. If you think that, I don't know, I'm not in your position, I don't hold your positions, I don't do your job, so I don't know if it's okay for you to do, whether you feel comfortable making a recommendation. I hope that you do, and I hope that we can pass that on. So I hope that we can do that. The part of it is I wound up putting something together in such short notice for me too, but I knew that if we waited any longer for the holidays to come, no one was going to be here, everybody would be focused on the holidays, and just the meeting kind of would, not have the same impact. But talking about just kind of informing I'm hoping that we can wind up getting the PTA and the rec council involved in another meeting from this meeting. I'm really hoping that. But I'd like to have a questionnaire in schools if it's possible. I don't know, I'm just hoping that this is possible. Ask people 5 minutes at the beginning of the year, or 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Do you know what a TBI is? Do you know someone that has a TBI? Do you know the symptoms? It doesn't take long to go through a checklist. If we start that out in kindergarten, first grade, whatever, just first year, do you know what a TBI is? No, I have no idea. Second year, you say, do you know what a TBI is? They're checking yes. I know what a TBI is because I just learned a little something about it last year. Then, do you know the symptoms of a TBI? So you'd be teaching everybody in just a few minutes each and every year about what traumatic brain injuries are. And then ask them to go home and share it with their guardians, parents, favorite cousin, whatever. And then you're not only winding up teaching the kids, but you also have that going to the homes. So I don't know if that's something, it's real simple. It doesn't seem like it will cost a heck of a lot of money. Now, I don't know what it will cost Baltimore County to buy a whole bunch of paper. But I think that the benefits, would be affordable compared to some other things that could happen. So it would be a great thing if it could materialize.
No, I think that you're correct.